You're listening to episode 120 of the D6 podcast.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 podcast. Here's your hosts, Ron Hunter and Jeremy Lee.
This is the family ministry podcast that helps you connect church and home. And we are connecting the church with millennial parents today, Ron. Now, what would you say are characteristics of a millennial parent?
Of a millennial parent? One of my kids, which we talked about last week, is the very tip end of a millennial, and my second one is the very early end of Generation Z.
Okay.
And they are very different personalities.
Interesting.
And I'm worried that my son would say the typical characteristic of his parenting style would be everything that my dad did not do.
Well,
no, he's going to make a great dad. And I think millennials, they're looking to right the ship. That's probably the wrong term, but I think they see some items that we as Xers and, maybe boomers, if they happen to be, the youngest of many in the kids, they want to do some things differently. But I also think they want to get it right. They have some real values. They're value-driven in those areas. And this is a good time to begin mentoring and coaching and training without us passing along our baggage onto them.
And I'm going to go ahead and make a confession to you. By the way, we have Leneita Fix today who's going to be helping us navigate this. And I don't think I talked to Leneita about this because it was Leneita's time. But in this moment, I'm going to take a little bit of my time here and confess to you that sometimes I don't buy into these generational things. Like, it's just, I don't know. It feels so dang stereotypical. But at the same time, the patterns that you see from the study of the generations, they're valid. You do see those patterns at times.
You do.
But my thing is, it just feels...
You can't make the assumption everybody fits all the patterns. That's the key. But we are somewhat products of our culture, and that's all they're suggesting is they're defining generations based upon cultural influences or impacts. Same thing with Myers-Briggs or, any personality assessment. We can fit those general categories, but almost every assessment test you read says these are the typical categories of an INTJ or whatever your letters are in the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI. But then you've got to pick the 2 or 3 out of the 5 or 7 descriptors that actually fit you. So we don't fit everything within these descriptors, and that's true with the generations. But we can find some generally accurate categories of influencers that show how they typically respond to certain items.
But millennials are significant for a couple of things. I mean, and we talk a little bit about in the interview, but this is one of the first completely digital generations. And this is one of the first generations whose school violence and school shootings and those kind of things are common to them.
Yes.
And they weren't common to previous generations.
No, they were not.
Those are just a few examples. There are so many things that this generation has had to face and deal with that other generations haven't. I do feel like this is significant, even though I'm not as big into the whole generational thing, I can see with millennials especially why it is valid to think about what they've experienced versus previous generations and how that would skew the way that they view parenting.
Right. And in fact, we often, Xers especially, will dump on millennials with some negative characteristics. I was not at this conference. It's a terrific conference. It's the Right Now Media Conference. But a good friend of mine was there last year in 2017, and there was a speaker. And so this is my way of assigning credit when I don't know who said it. They said, I am a millennial minister. They're a very talented leader. They said, I know you've given us all these negative descriptors about, we're entitled, we're this, that. He said, but who gave us all the participation trophies? You did as Xers. They really are products of some of the things we critique them for, we created. We gave them participation trophies so they wouldn't feel like losers or winners or, any category that we really did. Sometimes the pendulum swings too far when we're trying to correct what our parents did. We swing too far to the other side, creating more problems. Unintentional consequences occur. And I think every generation wants to get it better than the previous generation.
And if you're ministering to parents, then you need to recognize when there's such a seismic shift in the viewpoint of parents.
Yes.
So this is important, especially if you're working currently with younger kids, you're going to be dealing with millennial parents. And if you're a youth minister working with older kids, it's coming your way. So it's a great time to learn and prepare. Leneita Fix is a great guide along this journey.
By the way, she's an expert not only in millennials. She wouldn't claim to be an expert, but she's read enough books on both the millennials and the Generation Z to know the nuances. And so I would tout her as a person you'd want to come and speak on either one of these generations and,
For
the
sure.
characteristics.
Leneita is a trusted friend of D6, and so you could borrow that trust if you would like and allow her to minister to your church. It would be great. Before we go into this, though, before we head to break, I just want to make a mention because it feels like parents of millennial parents currently are in the children's ministry world. And while we have the ear of children's ministers, can you talk just for a second about Elements Kids Worship, which in my opinion is like one of the best deals you guys offer?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every now and then we take Pastor Steve, who is the personality on Elements Kids Worship, to a conference where he's speaking and working. And when I'm walking through the hallway, it's like I'm walking with a rock star to some degree. Not you know what I mean by this. People are coming going, oh, can I get my picture made with Pastor Steve? He builds these lessons, and they're video, and they're downloadable, they're digital, everything's online, to where he's not doing everything for you, but he's doing enough for you that it really lightens your load. And you can do as much or little of the digital video content as you would like in there, but we provide everything to you in a downloadable format. And I tell you what, the kids eat it up. The quality of the videos are just incredible. They're superb. And everybody who uses our Elements Kids Worship says that we are undervaluing the price compared to our competitors out there. And let me tell you how we value that. We don't value it based upon what we think it is worth, because it's worth way more. We value our products so that the average size churches can afford it, not just the big box churches. That's why it's priced the way it is. So if you'd like to see that, go to Elements Kids Worship and take a look at that. You can find it on d6family.com. You can find it. Just go take a look at it. You can download, I think there's 2 weeks. You can download a free sample and take a look and see what it's like.
All right. And in just a few moments, we'll take a look at what Leneita Fix has to say about how to minister to millennial parents. We'll see you after the break.
Hey everybody, it's your good friend Pastor Steve with the Elements Kids Worship team. Elements Kids Worship is a completely downloadable 52-week curriculum for use in your church with either midweek programming, kids' church hour, or even with small groups. Through Elements, kids experience deeper growth and understanding of what it means to walk with Christ. This is accomplished by teaching firm biblical truths and emphasizing the need for kids to not only understand what the Bible says, but to apply it to their own personal lives. Elements Kids Worship is a valuable and economical tool for your church to use to impact kids with the elemental truths of God's Word. Oh, hey, one more thing. Be sure to head over to d6family.com to check out Elements Kids Worship for yourself.
All right. right, Miss Leneita Fix is no stranger to D6, are you?
I am not. I'm so excited to be here this year, and I just love this conference.
Yeah, and let me tell everybody who you are real quick. I know who you are, but they need to know who you are. She spent more than 2 decades passionate about youth and family ministry, serving in many capacities, demographics, and areas. She loves to speak, empower, equip, and write for adolescents and all who support them. And that's true. She writes for all who support them. You'll find Miss Leneita's work all over the place, and that's a beautiful thing. Speaking of beautiful, the beautiful chaos of parenting teens is her most recent project. Her joy is serving with her husband, John, 3 teenage kids, and niece in sunny Florida. But it's hurricane season while we're recording this, and
Yes.
It hasn't been very sunny, has it?
It was not. No, we just went through Irma and had one room flooded and a tree down. So, yeah, we survived the largest hurricane in history. So
You need a T-shirt. I survived.
I know.
Woo! But today, Leneita, I always tell you when we're not in recording, so I'm just going to say it in public, that I give you the topics that nobody else wants because you know how to knock this stuff out.
It always makes me laugh.
I can't stump Leneita. I try, and I can't. And I don't think I'm going to do it today. We'll see.
You might.
But the topic I have for you is kind of a new topic in the family ministry conversation because it's a new scenario. And that is ministering to millennial parents.
Exactly.
Millennials are becoming parents, and we need to figure out how to connect to them, how to help them, and they're going to parent from a completely different perspective. So let's start there. What's unique about millennial parents?
So one thing to think about when it comes to millennial parents is it's really interesting that we're still putting out all of these statistics about millennials. We're still talking about how entitled millennials are, how everybody gets a trophy, about how they're living in their mother's basement. The oldest millennial is in their 40s now. And so when you put it in that perspective, you're thinking, I actually read an article recently that said, we're still talking about all of these things, and the oldest millennials have mortgages and car payments and kids in sports. And so I think what we have to begin to remember prospectively is in family ministry, the boomers, which is who we typically think of as parents, are now the grandparents.
Yeah.
The entire boomer generation are grandparents. I mean, maybe there's a couple that have, older teenagers, but the majority of the parents in our church are Gen X and Gen Y, the millennial families. So it's a completely different way that everybody looks at parenting. Both of those generations look at parenting vastly differently than the boomers did. And so it's really important that we begin to change our perspective in the way that we're approaching not just family ministry as a whole and their kids, but also the parents. So one of the very interesting thing about millennial parents is the whole helicopter parenting issue.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I keep hearing is, because they were the result of helicopter parents. But 2 things have come out as a result of that. So the first is that because that whole idea was exposed, they don't want to be seen as helicopter parents. The other piece of that is I think that my generation of parents and millennial parents are helicopter parents when it does come out for a different reason. So boomers were helicopter parents because they wanted to insulate their kids, they wanted to protect their kids from bad stuff, they wanted them to have an easier life than what they had. We are helicopter parents, millennials are helicopter parents, because the global climate that we live in is so scary. Even if you just look at the last month, we've had the largest natural disaster in history with Hurricane Harvey, the largest hurricane in history with Irma, covered the entire state of Florida. We've had an earthquake in Mexico that we still don't know the death count on. We've had a second Category 5 hurricane come through over the Caribbean islands and Puerto Rico. I mean, that's just the natural disasters. We haven't even gotten into global terrorism or politics or anything like that. So we're helicopter parents, and millennials are helicopter parents because they're afraid. We live in a very uncertain world, and they're very fearful. The other piece of that is because they're used to using technology, they can get to information really quickly. So, for example, 20 years ago, something bad happened in the world, and we had to wait to get to a television to turn it on. Within 3 seconds of an earthquake happening, we're watching live video of somebody dying under rubble. And so all of this stuff is bombarding these parents, and so they're helicopter parents, and we're helicopter parents because we're afraid of the world that our kids are going into. But the other piece of that is they don't want to be seen as helicopter parents. So they want to raise their children to be more independent. They want to raise their children to be able to look at the world and make decisions for themselves. If you're ever in a room with a group of millennials and you say, oh, the millennials, you almost watch collectively the shoulders slump and go, okay, yeah, we know it, blah, blah, blah. Not everybody gets a trophy. But they don't want their kids to be seen like that. They want their kids to be different. And so they want to raise more independent, globally minded, injustice hating children to see the world on a larger scope. So I think that's probably one of the most unique things about this generation of parents in general.
What are some changes we need to make in our ministries to better connect with millennial parents?
I think the first thing is we have to stop panicking about technology, and we have to stop going in both directions. So we either panic and we start going, nobody can use any technology in Sunday service at all, or we go the other way and we think everything has to be on an app and on a screen. I think what we have to remember is because millennials are digital immigrants, and their children will have never known a day without a touch screen in their life. It's a peripheral in their world. It's just something that's a part of their everyday. So yes, their kids might be, I'm always struck by this. When my kids were little, when they were toddlers, and we'd be in Target, and they're because my kids were, they're all, it's 2.5 years from youngest to oldest in my biological kids, that, we'd be in Target and I'd have to have toys in my purse, or, I'm letting them have the lollipops off the candy aisle to keep them. Now, you look at them and they've got, the kids are watching cartoons in the cart. Well, we're all reacting to all of this. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things we have to change, is we have to stop reacting and panicking to technology, and we have to just realize it's a peripheral part it's just a part of their everyday. And so instead, we have to begin to help equip them with how to create boundaries for their kids, because Gen X and Gen Y, as parents, are the first generation of parents where technology is moving faster than they can keep up with. Every other generation of parents before them, there was something that had come before, movies came before television. And so there was something that came before that they could rely on, and then they could catch up. Today's parents can't catch up, so it's moving faster than they can get to it. So rather than over-focusing, we just have to help them, okay? And rather than reacting, oh, your child's not going to be able to interact with the world because they've looked at too many cartoons, because you can't handle a temper tantrum. Instead, we need to help them understand how to utilize these things, what to do with them, and how to connect with their kids. And not go either direction with it, not to be over panicked by it, and then also to not be overly focused on needing to have it all the time either.
What mistakes do we want to avoid with millennial parents?
I think one of the biggest is to keep we keep them in this entitled box. We keep them in the trophy box. We keep going back to these misconceptions about them. They actually have become a generation of hard workers. Yes, they may have shown up on the workforce scene and said, I deserve to be here. There's that joke, I deserve a promotion because I showed up. They actually have proven themselves to be very, very hard workers and to care deeply about the world around them. The thing about millennials is that they were teenagers or young adults when the Great Recession hit. So they're very aware of needing to financially care for their family and wanting to do a good job at taking care of their family. They're not the ne'er-do-wells that we think they are. Even there's an interesting statistic that just came out that because so many millennials went into the job market during the Great Recession, their starting pay was actually between 9 to 12% lower than the starting page a decade earlier at the same age. So a 22-year-old going out, when they were 22 going into the workforce, they were making 9% less, 9 to 12% less than Gen X when they went out to the workforce workforce at 22. So they recognize that, and they know that they have to keep up. And the other thing that's happened is that, so there's always this running joke that everybody's selling, essential oil, shampoo, or Plexus. It's because they want to be able to provide well for their family. And so we're seeing them not buy houses or not buy expensive cars. And we're saying, oh, it's because they're buying avocado toast and they don't know how to manage their money. It's actually, they're so aware of what happened, what they lost in those years during the Great Recession. They want to take care of their families. So I think we need to just reapproach the way that we look at them and basically recognize that they're grown-ups. And like every grown-up, they want to take good care of their kids. They're also a generation, I think it's like 70 to 75% of them rely on their parents' advice for parenting. So how cool is that here we are talking about family ministry and generational ministry and how we should really be looking to pour into 2 generations ahead of us. And here's a generation of parents looking to their parents to help them be better parents. And so I think that's a really cool statistic.
Well, that's incredible perspective. I genuinely appreciate it. I want to make sure that we don't miss the chance to talk about Beautiful Chaos. So can you just give us a little bit of a synopsis about Beautiful Chaos?
Sure. The Beautiful Chaos of Parenting Teens is really for parents who are struggling to understand their teenagers, which I think is every parent who has a child between the ages. I was just talking to somebody in the hallway on my way here, and I was saying it kind of starts at 9. You begin to see this shift of them moving from childhood into these tween years, and then it just goes in full force at about 11, and you just see this huge change in your child, and you have to connect with them all the time, but you're exhausted in knowing how to do it. So it's just real practical advice. If you have a child somewhere between 9 and 19, it's just really practical advice on ways to connect with your kids through every facet of life, through when you're in the car with them, when you're through school projects, when the dinner table has changed. So that's an interesting thing about millennial parents too, is they still want that family dinner time connection, but the reality is that schedules don't dictate the ability to have time around the dinner table. So they're creative in the way that they have conversations with their kids. And I think that's something that we all need to learn how to do, is we need to stop lamenting that our lives, we want our lives to be less busy, and instead start kind of embracing the fact that, okay, if they are busy, how do we connect with our kids in the midst of all of that? So that's what we do in the book. If
you guys want to connect with Miss Leneita Fix, where do they need to go online to find you?
So I would start with Twitter or Facebook. I'm really hoping to launch a website in the next couple of months called The Parenting Fix. So
great title.
It's been a process for about a year, so hopefully, and that will be a place where you can land. It will be a landing place, just real practical stuff for parents, and there's a lot of information on there about Gen Z, which is kind of this generation. It's basically anybody between 5 and 22 right now is in Gen Z. So that's so those 2 places. So
super cool.
So
Parenting Fix is a great name.
Yeah.
Good job.
So thanks.
All right. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Splink is a simple way to help families in your church link together spiritually. It comes as a free weekly email with ideas that parents can use to have fun, make memories, and talk with their kids. Those teachable moments give moms and dads opportunity to share spiritual truths and life lessons. And no matter how busy life is, there's always time to Splink. Share d6family.com with the parents in your ministry so they can sign up today to start receiving free weekly Splink.
Well, our thanks go out to Leneita. I've interviewed her many times, and this was one of my favorites for sure because, she has dealt with a lot of different topics, but it felt like for this one, she had some real passion going about this topic. And I think it's really cool that she's serving the church so well with this kind of research and prep that she's done on this topic. So thank you, Leneita. We totally appreciate your time. And we are heading into our next episode 121, by the way. We're in the 120s.
Wow.
Already.
Unbelievable.
Already.
Unbelievable.
And we are going to have Matthew Deprez with us. He is going to talk to us about, I think, a really interesting topic that in my best knowledge, we have done 120 something of these. In my best knowledge, I don't think we've ever covered this topic. And this is the transitions that ministries make from preschool to children, and then from children to middle, and then from middle to high, and then from high to college, and then from college to adult.
Yeah.
Those transition moments in ministry, how do we leverage those in an incredible way? Cool topic. I'm excited for you to hear about this. It is next week, Matthew Deprez. You'll enjoy it. We'll see you then. Have a great week of ministry.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com. And if you're a minister, we invite you to join the D6 Leader Network by going to d6leader.net.